Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving into Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers, the story of success. You know that book that's been sitting on your shelf, whispering promises of unlocking the secrets to extraordinary achievement?
Yeah.
Well, today we're finally cracking it open.
And let me tell you, it's a fascinating journey that really challenges our assumptions about what leads to success. Gladwell takes us beyond the usual suspects, talent, hard work, intelligence,
Right.
and reveals the surprising role of opportunity, timing, and even cultural legacy.
Okay, let's unpack this. The book starts with a real head-scratcher. The Roseto Mystery.
Hmm.
Imagine a small town in 1950s America where people are living longer and healthier lives than anyone else. And we're not talking about a community of health nuts.
Right.
These folks enjoyed their pasta, their cigarettes. They even added sausage to their pepperoni pizzas.
Right. Doctors were baffled. They expected to find some genetic predisposition, some miracle diet. But the answer was far more intriguing. As Gladwell puts it, the Rosens were healthy because of where they were from, because of the world they had created for themselves.
They had this incredibly tight-knit community, multi-generational households, constant social interaction, a shared sense of belonging. It was like a protective bubble against the stresses of modern life.
And this really sets the stage for Gladwell's entire argument. He's saying, hey, look beyond the individual. Success isn't just about personal grit, it's about the environment we're embedded in.
It's like that old saying, it takes a village. But Gladwell doesn't stop there. He then dives headfirst into one of his most famous concepts, the 10,000-hour rule.
Ah, yes, the rule that launched 1,000 blog posts. And it's a powerful idea, even if it's been somewhat misinterpreted over the years. Gladwell uses the example of Bill Joy, this programming prodigy who revolutionized software. Was he just born brilliant?
Well, he was certainly one smart cookie. But Gladwell argues that Joy's success was also a product of extraordinary opportunity, like being at the right university, the University of Michigan, at the exact moment they installed one of the first supercomputers.
And not just that, but they also had this new time-sharing system. Imagine, unlimited computer access back when most people had to wait in line for just a few minutes of processing time. It was like stumbling upon a gold mine. Joy himself said, I was incredibly lucky.
He was able to rack up those crucial hours of practice, experimenting, honing his skills at a time when most people couldn't even get near a computer. Gladwell compares this to the Beatles' experience in Hamburg, playing night after night in those grungy clubs.
Exactly. They weren't playing Carnegie Hall. They were playing 8-hour gigs for rowdy crowds, sometimes multiple times a day. It forced them to become incredibly tight as a band, to experiment, to develop their signature sound.
By the time they returned to England, they were practically seasoned veterans. Gladwell argues that this kind of intense focused practice is a pattern among those who achieve mastery in their fields. He cites research suggesting that it takes around 10,000 hours to truly excel, whether you're a musician, an athlete, or a software developer.
And while some have argued that the 10,000-hour rule is an oversimplification, I think Gladwell's point still stands. Opportunity to practice is crucial. You might have all the talent in the world, but without the chance to put in those hours, you'll never reach your full potential.
So it's not just about talent, it's about access. And sometimes it's about being born at just the right moment in history. Which leads us to Gladwell's analysis of birth dates. This is where it gets really interesting. Gladwell pulls this data on the birth years of the 75 richest people in history.
Yeah, like the super duper rich.
Okay, I'm already hooked. This
Exactly.
sounds like classic Gladwell finding hidden patterns in unexpected places. What did he find?
Well, it turns out that a surprising number of these tycoons were born within a 9-year window in the mid-1800s. Think about it. They came of age just as the railroads were being built, Wall Street was emerging, the American economy was undergoing this massive transformation.
So they were perfectly positioned to ride that wave of industrial growth.
Exactly. It wasn't just about their individual brilliance, but about being born into a moment where their skills were suddenly in high demand. They were lucky, no doubt, but they were also prepared to seize those opportunities.
It's like they were dealt a winning hand and they knew how to play it. But Gladwell doesn't stop at opportunity and timing. He also challenges a concept we often hold, intelligence.
Right, and this is where the story of Chris Langan comes in. This guy had an IQ higher than Einstein. Seriously off the charts, brilliant. Yet, despite his incredible mental capacity, Langan struggled to achieve the kind of success you might expect.
Yeah, it's a fascinating and honestly kind of a heartbreaking story. He came from a difficult background, had limited access to educational opportunities, and never quite found his footing.
Gladwell argues that what Langan lacked was practical intelligence. those social skills, those street smarts, that ability to navigate complex social situations.
Mhm.
He calls it knowing what to say to whom, knowing when to say it, and knowing how to say it in a way that will get you what you want.
It's like that saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know.
Yeah.
But Gladwell takes it a step further. He's saying it's not just who you know, it's how you navigate those relationships, how you leverage your intelligence in the real world.
And to illustrate this, he talks about a study where students were asked to come up with as many uses for a brick as possible.
Okay.
A classic test of creativity. And what's interesting is that the students who generated the most innovative ideas weren't necessarily the ones with the highest IQs.
It reminds me of that quote, everybody is a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it is stupid.
Exactly. Practical intelligence is about adaptability, resourcefulness, knowing how to use what you have to get what you need.
So where does this leave someone like Chris Langan? Was he simply dealt a bad hand?
Well, Gladwell doesn't offer easy answers, but he does suggest that Langan might have thrived in a different environment, one that recognized and nurtured his unique talent.
That makes you think about all the potential geniuses out there who never get the chance to shine because they don't fit the traditional mold.
Absolutely. And it speaks to the importance of creating a society that values different kinds of intelligence, different paths to success.
Now, speaking of different paths, I love how Gladwell contrasts Langan's story with that of Joe Flom, a lawyer who defied the odds to become one of the most successful in his field.
Flom's story is a perfect example of how seemingly disadvantageous circumstances can actually become advantages in disguise. He was the son of Jewish immigrants, grew up during the Depression, and faced considerable discrimination in the legal profession. Yet he rose to the top of his field. How? By specializing in an area of law that others considered undesirable hostile takeovers.
So he found a niche, honed his skills, and was ready when the corporate world shifted in the 70s and 80s.
Precisely. And Gladwell ties this back to Flom's cultural legacy. His parents were garment workers, a profession that demanded long hours resilience, a certain kind of street smarts.
It's like those values were passed down to Flom, giving him the grit and determination to succeed in a cutthroat field.
And it highlights how our cultural backgrounds, even those that seem to hold us back, can actually provide us with unique strengths.
Gladwell then takes this idea of cultural legacy to a whole other level with his analysis of Korean Air's struggles with plane crashes.
This is where Gladwell's ability to connect seemingly disparate ideas really shines.
Yeah.
He introduces the concept of the power distance index, which measures how comfortable different cultures are with hierarchies and authority.
And this is where things get really interesting, right? Because in a high power distance culture like Korea, there's this deep respect for authority figures, which can make it difficult to speak up even when lives are at stake.
Exactly. Imagine you're a co-pilot and you notice the captain is making a mistake. In a high power distance culture, directly challenging that authority can be incredibly difficult, even taboo.
So you're saying that cultural norms might have contributed to these plane crashes?
That's Gladwell's argument. He points to cockpit recordings where co-pilots use mitigated speech hinting at problems instead of directly confronting the captain.
It's a chilling thought that something as ingrained as cultural communication styles could have such dire consequences.
And it gets to the heart of Gladwell's point. We often underestimate the power of our cultural legacies, for better or for worse.
So what was the solution for Korean Air? Did they try to change their entire cultural mindset?
It's fascinating, actually. They brought in a Western consultant who made a seemingly simple but incredibly impactful change. He required all pilots to speak English in the cockpit.
English? Why English?
Because English, with its relatively low power distance index, allowed for more direct and assertive communication. It leveled the playing field, removing those cultural barriers that hindered clear communication.
So by changing the language, they changed the culture of the cockpit. It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
what other areas of life could benefit from this kind of cultural awareness?
Right. It's about recognizing that success isn't just about individual effort, but about understanding the often invisible forces that shape our behavior.
And speaking of invisible forces, Gladwell brings us back to the American education system with a thought-provoking look at something we often take for granted, summer vacation. I'll admit, when I first read about Gladwell tackling summer vacation, I thought, really, summer break, that's the big mystery. But then he lays out the research and you start to realize it's not about the vacation itself, it's about what happens during those seemingly carefree months.
Exactly. We tend to think of summer as this great equalizer, a time for kids to just be kids.
Yeah.
But as Gladwell points out, that's not really the case. While middle and upper class kids are often enrolled in camps, going to museums, basically staying intellectually engaged, kids from lower income families often don't have access to those opportunities.
So instead of closing the achievement gap, those summer months actually widen it.
Yeah.
It's this subtle but significant disadvantage that compounds year after year.
Gladwell calls it the summer learning loss, and it's a huge factor contributing to educational inequality. He highlights the work of Carl Alexander, who studied the reading scores of students from various socioeconomic backgrounds.
And the results were striking, weren't they?
Yes. Alexander found that while both wealthy and poor students made academic gains during the school year, wealthy students continued to learn at a steady pace during the summer, while lower-income students actually regressed. By the end of elementary school, the cumulative effect of this summer learning loss was dramatic.
It's like that saying, the rich get richer, but in this case, it's the educated get more educated, even when they're supposed to be on break. So how do we address this? Gladwell points to the KIPP Academy as one potential solution.
KIPP schools are doing something radical. They're extending the school year, longer days classes on Saturdays, even a shortened summer break.
Now I know what you're thinking. That sounds intense. But the results are undeniable. KIPP students, many from underprivileged backgrounds, are consistently outperforming their peers, closing that stubborn achievement gap.
It's a powerful example of how even seemingly small advantages, like a few extra weeks of school, can have a huge impact over time. It's like those Canadian hockey players born in January. Those extra months of practice in their younger years gave them a leg up.
Right.
Yeah.
It's that compounding effect of opportunity that Gladwell keeps coming back to, and he brings it all home quite literally with the story of his own mother, Joyce.
This is where the book gets really personal. Gladwell reveals how his mother, a brilliant woman from Jamaica, benefited from a series of unlikely events, riots that closed her school, a scholarship program for bright students, a changing social landscape that opened doors for women of color.
It's a powerful reminder that even our own personal narratives are shaped by forces beyond our control. We like to think we're self-made, but the reality is much more nuanced.
Absolutely. Gladwell's not saying that individual effort doesn't matter, but he's urging us to acknowledge the role of chance, of timing, of those seemingly invisible advantages that often determine who succeeds and who doesn't.
So where does this leave us? What's the takeaway from this deep dive into Outliers?
For me, it's a call to action. We can't control every hand we're dealt, but we can control how we play it. We can recognize our own hidden advantages and use them to create opportunities for others. We can support programs like KIPP that level the playing field, and we can challenge our own assumptions about success, recognizing that it's rarely a solo act, but rather a symphony of factors both visible and invisible.
Beautifully put. And I think that's the power of Gladwell's work. He makes us think differently about the world, about our place in it, and about our responsibility to create a more equitable society where everyone has a chance to reach their full potential.
And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive into Outliers. But the conversation doesn't have to end here. What are your outlier stories? Who are the people in your life who defied the odds, who achieved success against all expectations? Share your thoughts, keep the conversation going, and as always, happy diving.